And let's see if I can do this without killing myself here. So GoRo just texted me about desiring a particular pen and was curious to know about swapping a nib, taking a nice flexible nib out of one pen and shoving it into another pen. And it's not always that easy. Each nib and each feed and each hole in a section are different kettles of fish. So nibs, we'll talk about them first. The nib, cross section of the nib that fits into the section is essentially a circle, part of a circle. And a nib that is flexible is going to have a thinner piece of gold, often, than one that is firm. So if I took a firm nib out of a Waterman 52, for example, and then put in a number 2 nib that was flexible, chances are the number 2 nib would flop around in the feed, on the feed and in the section. There are many times, and I'm just trying to figure out if I can illustrate that here with the pens I just happen to have. Let's say this is a number 2 52. Here's the feed. Let's find another 52. It's another 52, but the feed doesn't come out. Let's just soak that. It's a 52 and a half. This is not a 52. It's not a 52. Here's a 52. Let's see if this nib feed comes out. Soak that. This nib has seen better days. It looks like it was run over, flattened by something. This is more of a number 4 size nib, fitting in a later 51 Commando style pen. Here's a 12. I can use this for, there we go. So here's a number 2 feed that's broken off, partly broken off for some reason. Why is that partly broken off? I don't know why, but it is. So that goes with that pen to make sure they're all going back together. So you can see here, here's 2 identical pens. And this is broken off, but it's meant to look like that. But look at the difference in the fat part of the feed. See that difference? So those, even these are both number 2 feeds. They are different in some way, in one way, in a particular way. This one went in here, this one went in here. Let's put that back where it came from. let's take these out, see if these have soaked. Not yet. This one come out? Not yet. So keep soaking those. Okay, here's another 452. Okay, this comes out. Does this fit in here? Okay, this, I don't know if you can hear that. It's kind of tight. Is this one equally tight? No. You don't hear that tightness that you hear here. So these two are not the same. Look how much longer too of course I'm forgetting now which pens these belonged in. Oh, is this a number 4? It has 4 spoon feeds, not just 2. I mean, there's 2 on each side, 2 spoons, 2 scoops in your Raisin Bran. Put this back. So, to answer anyone's question about feeds and nibs and sections, they're not all alike. You often see in Eversharp Skylines, they're all over the map. I don't think there was a single person that was in charge of quality control in that company. Yes, there is. Now, I would think, yes, there is. And I don't know what, I'm sure there's a right way to have the perfect nib feed section thing work together. I'm sure there's a perfect solution to every nib feed section. There are many combinations that are nearly perfect, and there's some combinations that will work perfectly well. Maybe the nib will have to be pushed in a little bit further than you might like from an aesthetic point of view to make it tight. Maybe the play of how much nib, how much feed, where the feed is relative to the nib. Again, there's a perfect way, but there are ways to tweak that, which will affect the flow of ink, or flow of ink, whether it's wet or dry, whether anyway, there's a lot of trial and error. And again, I'm sure if I worked at the Waterman factory and this barrel came down the conveyor belt, and I would screw in a section and I'd make sure that it was flush, because these are all different. You unscrew this and there's a bump, you put a different section in, screw section, and it's not going to match up as nicely. So you grab another one out of the big bin of sections until you find one that fits. Then you shove a feed in and you feel, okay, this seems tight. Then you grab a nib out of the nib pile and you put it together and you say, oh my God, I need a firm nib for this pen because the flexible nib swims in it. So you find the firm nib, you shove that in, you see if that works, test it out on the page. Good, done, toss it in the done pile. Today, we are not lucky. I'm not lucky. I don't have thousands of nibs and sections and feeds to choose from. I have to choose from the 20 or 30 or 40 I might have around here. You and you and you in the audience that only have 5 Waterman number 2 sized pens, and you want to swap the flexible nib and from a perfectly happy pen like this to put it in a pen like that, you may not have the luxury of being able to make that happen because you only have 5. How did I make 5? You only have 5 feeds, 5 pens, 5 nibs. So that's the trauma of your life, your lot in life. Would the placement affect the flexibility? Not really, no. I can imagine it could in some rare instances, it might. I'm trying to think of how. When you're pressed down and the tines open and the ink flows and makes a thicker line, I know that it might railroad if the nib and feed and its placement in the section isn't optimal. Also, if you don't shove the pen in far enough in the feed, the pen will want to lift up off the feed. If there's not, you need to have it snugly in to keep the nib in contact with the feed when it's pressed down to its fullest amount. And sometimes when I'm building Franken pens, I'm really what am I really doing? I'm discovering that for the Franken pen to work, I'm more limited in what I can do in terms of how far in I can shove the nib without cracking it. So there's a little bit of that going on. So if the nib is pushed back too much and the feed is pulled out too much, what's going to happen is you're going to bottom out. The feed will hit the paper. And you don't want that to happen. The feed will hit the paper. Hi. So you don't want that. Sometimes that does happen. But also, all of this depends on how you hold the pen too. If you're vertical or more horizontal, that will make a difference as well. Normally, the feed should never touch the paper. Any other questions? Today I may go drawing with a friend who invited me to go visit him at his house in the South End. I may do that. I may just stay here and continue to try to put my studio and my artwork, hang the artwork. My hallway is full of pictures on the floor, and my neighbors do not like it. I don't like it either. But what I'm trying to do is rehang art, frame art, hang art, and try to use up as many frames as I have in my house, because I'm tired of tripping over them in my house as well. So anyway, that's my plan. So I'm going to say goodbye to you now. The end result is, yes, it's a crapshoot. You see it really in every single pen company. There's always a variety of nibs out there that require a variety of different feeds, which also then require a different sized hole in the pen. And though 70% of the time or 50% of the time you can swap a nib and it'll be perfectly fine without a lot of trauma. Other times you swap them and the pens will skip. The nibs will skip, or they'll be too wet, or they'll be too dry. The hardest pen nib to swap is, strangely enough, the Parker 51. They're almost always firm, but they're almost impossible you take all day long to find the right cone section, or cone and nib. The feed is almost identical. The collector is almost identical. It's just the hood of the 51 is not the same. So anyway, I have to go. I have to eat, and my stomach is making noises. So talk to you all later.